But I tell you, the one that I still have not held in my hands, and I believe CGC's only graded one copy, maybe two, but I think
Wow.
only one is.
Matt, I want to have you explain what the Gerber white space is. I want to hear your stories about them because I think you were trying to track about, do any of these actually exist? And if so, what do they look like? How many are there?
Yeah, so a little background. So the Gerbers, that's the photojournals by Ernie Gerber, two volumes that he put out in, I believe, '89, I think it was, and it was groundbreaking for the hobby because this is obviously pre-internet, and he photographed the cover of every comic book, or tried to, from the beginning until into the 50s. Now he got, I think by the late 40s and 50s there were some, he was skipping over some issues of lesser titles, but all the main stuff is there. And it was really the first time that a lot of collectors got to see a lot of covers they'd never seen before, because up to that point your only exposure was your local comic shop, if you were lucky and there was a show nearby, and if you're really lucky the show had dealers who actually had inventory of the old stuff. And catalogs would come in, but they didn't have pictures, and so really, the hobby was largely blind to what a lot of these covers looked like. And so the Gerbers allowed a chance for all these collectors to go issue by issue and go, oh my God, look at this cover, look at that cover, and it really started to give rise to the cover-driven market that we see that is in full force today. But it was in its infancy at the time, and so I picked up I lucked into a couple of copies, or a copy of both volumes, pretty quick, 91, 92, I think. And and by the way, it's a shame because the book was cost a fortune to print, I imagine, because I think they were originally sold for like $200 for the set or something. And this is the late 80s, so it's a lot of money for two volumes. And so I don't know how it initially sold, but I think it took a while for it to kind of make its way into collectors' hands, and I think eventually they were being wholesaled. So I came across my copies, and of course, me, probably like everybody else, were just enthralled and spent hours and hours going page by page. And I noticed that there were like an occasional blank white spot, and it wasn't like at the end of a run, or some silly run. It was like in the middle of Flash comics. Flash 56 is missing a spot, a Star Spangled, or what was it, Exciting Comics 28. And so I'm like, Star Spangled 60, and I'm like, what, DC, a run of DC, which was probably, at that point, among the most collected companies from the Golden Age. And Gerber couldn't find a Flash 56. This is really odd. And so I said, I'm going to figure out how many white spaces are there? What are they? So I sat there and I went through the whole, both volumes, made a list, and it was about 100, give or take. And it was interesting because it was completely random. I mean, it was like, books from the 30s, books from the 40s, books from the 50s, books from every different publisher, random issues, usually in the middle of the run, Catman 13. And some of them are really obscure. And so I set about looking for these books, and it took a while. Some turned up quickly, which it made it even more mysterious that Ernie couldn't get like Flash 56. You could find Flash 56, and yet I'm like, why? And I think that I had actually spoken to him about this years later, and I believe one of the stories, and it might have been the Flash or one of these books, he actually didn't realize he didn't have a picture of it at the last minute.
Yeah.
And I think he was like it was crunch time at the printer, and he just went forward with it. And I think that was the case with a couple of them. But then if you look at his scarcity rating, you'll see that he usually assigns 8s, 9s, and 10s to the blank spots. But there's some he doesn't. So I think in some of those cases, he just forgot, or realized too late that he didn't have an image. But regardless, so I started finding a few pretty quickly. And then obviously, as I started getting through the list of 100s, I started slowing down, and I eventually got most of them. I'd say I probably got 70 or 80 of them, and then I was able to obtain images, or Xeroxes back then, of the remaining ones from other collectors. But I tell you, the one that I still have not held in my hands, and I believe CGC's only graded one copy, maybe two, but I think only one, is Funnies 22. Which is the silliest book. It's a silly cover. Obviously the titles, it's the Funnies. It's strip reprint stuff from the 30s. And yet there's this, I don't know why. And maybe that's a book where there's only 10 existing copies. Maybe, maybe that is one that breaks all the rules we're talking about. But that, yeah. And the funny thing is that I remember checking the census in the grading room one day, And I'm like, whoa, where did this copy come in? And I realized it had passed through, another grader like 2 months earlier. And I was like, oh my God, I would have, I should have put a red flag on the book or something, and had the grading room looking for that, So and there's an image of it, but to date, I've still never held a copy or seen one for sale. So, that was the one, that was to me the holy grail in terms of rarity of the Gerber White Spaces. So if people want to bring that one out and see if it comes out of the woodwork and test their theory about scarcity and rarity, and that might be a good one to start with. Oh, and then also I started writing articles for CBM at the time. For Overstreet and for Gary Carter. So Gary struck upon this idea to start a column that I would write every month, and I would talk about one or two unseen gold books. And so I think it ran for, it ran out of steam at some point, but I think I got like maybe 10 or 12 column articles in. And he actually started to, he would print stickers in the CBMs. So at some point in there, you'd open up the magazine and there would be like an insert in the centerfold where 1, 2, or 3 or 4 unseen gold covers were printed on sticker sheets, and you could peel them off and put them in your photojournals. And we never finished it. One of my unfinished projects was to go back and create a full sticker set for the photojournals and sell that, and I never did that. But at least we had a nice little run in CBM there, and got a lot of exposure to those books. And some of those books took off, like Captain Arrow 26 was a particular one that was just nobody knew what the cover looked like, and lo and behold, it's this amazing blue LB Cole sci-fi cover. I did an article on it called the Sci-Fi Trio. It was Captain Flight 11, Captain Arrow 26, and Contact 12, which all three were the last issue of those 3 runs. All 3 were sci-fi covers by LB Cole, which differed from the other covers in the run. So it was almost like, I don't know if they may even come out around the same time, but LB Cole must have just been like, I'm just going to finish off these runs with a bang. So once that came out in CBM and people saw that cover, that book shot up in price, and that was one of the great things about CBM was that magazine helped uncover a lot of gems, and it was a driver in the market for a while. It was a big driver. So good stuff back then.
So among those white spaces, you mentioned a few that really are cool, right? That they're like, oh, we've never seen this before, and it happens to be an amazing cover by LB Cole. What other covers would you put in that category that are pretty special?
There was the other one that jumps out was Exciting 28, which that was right in that run of Schomburg covers. And in fact, I think it just started doing the covers shortly before that. But the 28, again, same thing, shows up in the mail. I don't even think I saw a picture of it. I just saw it listed in CBG, ordered it, and I opened the package. And it's an underwater scene, underwater Nazi scene where the Black Terror's attacking, I think, a Nazi that's underwater with the scuba gear. But of course, he's got the Nazi emblems and everything, and just the coolest cover. There was a Matt Baker romance cover. I think it's Blue Ribbon. There's a Blue Ribbon Matt Baker cover. It's pretty cool. It's not super racy or anything, but that's a good one. And then like Indian Braves and some funny animal books. So some of it's not really that exciting, but it was just fun to chase because I like the thrill of the chase, and the fact that Gerber couldn't find them made me feel like, wow, these must be a challenge, and many were.